Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those people in Perth. I have here myself, Gordon McGirt from the National Health and Medical Research Council, and to my right, Joel Seremaidas, also from the Clinical Trials section of the National Health and Medical Research Council. So as you'll have seen, today's webinar is about the human research ethics application, and this has been broadcast in association with ANDS, the Australian National Data Service, with whom NHMRC has an agreement to propagate research. May I take the opportunity first to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are joining us today. Okay, so the purpose of the webinar, as you'll see from the next slide, hopefully, is to discuss and provide information on the human research ethics application. This application has been some time in the making. It started around 2013 when we first started to socialise the idea, but of course many of you will understand that there has been a need to find an upgrade to the current National Ethics Application form for some time. We believe now we're in a position to test the application as it is on a wider basis. But of course the purpose of this is to provide some information and I guess some comfort to those on the line that the advent of this application will really not be much of a change from the National Ethics Application form, except that it will be easier, more efficient and more contemporary in the sense of working with the majority of information technology systems. So as you'll see there, the purpose is to discuss the following, and I won't really go into that, but I think it's important for us, especially towards the end, to reinforce what timelines we see as being appropriate for this application. So when we talk about the current application form landscape, many of you will be aware that there are a plethora of applications across Australia. Of course, the NHMRC developed the National Ethics Application form, which was first released in 2006 and then in 2008. And since then has had a few band-aids, or what we call patches, to keep it going during the rolling review of the national statement. One of the issues around the National Ethics Application form is the fact that it asks questions largely on every paragraph of the national statement, which means it's very long and not necessarily applicable to all forms of research. We know also that the National Ethics Application form is used to a large extent by those that wish to do research involving clinical trials, but the universities and medical research institutes do in fact have their own applications, and this is also true for low-risk research and for negligible risk research, so-called LNR. So why is there a need to replace the NEAF? Well, firstly and most importantly, we have a government mandate to do this through a budget measure which was provided in 2013, so-called Expediting Clinical Trials Reforms budget measure. In there was a requirement to redevelop the NEAF. We have actually just taken the opportunity, even though that budget measure was largely for the expediting clinical trials, we've taken the opportunity to make a form which will be applicable across the spectrum of research. We realised that the previous form was largely biomedical focused, and we think we have been able to incorporate such functionality as to make it widely applicable. The IT supporting NEAF isn't necessarily contemporary. So NEAF is based on an old system. There isn't any rich text format. There's no navigation panel to know where you are in the form, as would be provided in contemporary forms. And furthermore, I think we see there's an opportunity for greater consistency if we can devise or construct a form which meets requirements of both universities, medical research institutes, social scientists, biomedical scientists, clinical research scientists, and others, epidemiological, health services research, then I think we've probably done a good thing for Australia. So this was our aim in starting this project, which began in 2013. It's probably important for you to understand, at least from our perspective, what the HREA is. From our perspective, it's an application that seeks only to elicit the information required to determine the ethical acceptability of a research project involving humans. It's not intended to be anything other than an application form. The NHMRC's remit is largely that of developing an ethics application for use by researchers and ethics committees. Anything else, any other additions to that may be able to be added to the form as an attachment, and we'll get to that later. We believe the form will be suitable for all types of research, as I've said, including low risk and negligible risk research, and we'll get onto a bit later how that might be achieved. But more importantly, this contemporary form now has a capability to transfer information into most stakeholders' information technology systems. Of course, this will be dependent on how, contemporary those systems are, but from our perspective, we will be able, through web services, to have our information uploaded into a destination. So in that sense, it probably ranks up there as a very contemporary system, and we hope that institutions will be able to modify their systems to work with this form. Important to add also that the HREA is also based on the principles of the national statement rather than, as I've said, each particular paragraph. This should give ethics committees comfort that the narrative which will be provided will in fact address their concerns rather than just perhaps what may be considered trying to deal with every particular paragraph. Important to understand then that what the HREA is not is version 3 of the NIEF. We've deliberately tried to move away from that particular paradigm. The number of questions has been reduced, the IT system around it has been improved, but largely and more importantly, this should be applicable across all areas of research. As it says there, it's primarily not biomedical focused. It's also not an application that's developed in order to complete site-specific requirements for research, including clinical trials. And this is because largely this is an ethics form. That said, there is of course an opportunity to include some information that may be useful to provide either the Ethics Office or the Human Research Ethics Committee with the information they require. Sometimes this information isn't clearly either ethics or governance, but in order to facilitate the job of the Ethics Office, we can certainly discuss what information may also be included there. And that will come out during our beta testing, which we're just about to commence. So just some thoughts about how the Human Research Ethics application was developed. The important message here is that this was developed by the community and for the community. As you can see there, we had a national consultation on the concept, and we had over 500 respondents to this consultation. We established an advisory group comprising individuals from universities, medical research institutes, jurisdictions, hospitals. This is chaired by Professor Paula Swatman from the University of Tasmania. Important also that we managed to include individuals with expertise not just in clinical research or in biomedical science, but also over some of the social science disciplines. And in that sense, I think we believe we had a very representative group. The content of the form has been developed and reviewed by discipline-specific ethics committees. We used over 20 ethics committees that have expertise in certain disciplines to provide comment on the content so far, obviously in conjunction with our advisory group. We've also worked to implement this form. We've worked with institutions and also with information management vendors to try and implement this form. It's important for us that it works across the spectrum of information management systems that are available, and noting that some are more modern than others, and some are bespoke, and some are, I guess, in common usage. We're also working with some of the jurisdictions to try and ensure that their needs are met. It's important for us as the National Health and Medical Research Council, working with our colleagues in the Department of Health and with the states and territories throughout Australia, to try and make this form as usable as possible. At the moment, we don't anticipate major hurdles, but as Donald Rumsfeld said, you just don't know what you don't know. And even though we have endeavoured to ascertain the information we require, it may be forums such as this that will provide that information to us. As it says at the bottom there, we do require to do wide beta testing to refine the application. While it would be possible at this stage to lock down the fields, at the end of the day, until we do this beta testing, we won't know whether it works across all research and for all groups. So we also have to anticipate that because the national statement is under rolling review, there will be from time to time the need to alter some of the questions or perhaps question fields. That said, I think we have a pretty good idea right now that the information we have there is that which is required. However, it would be remiss of us not to provide a wider group with the opportunity to test it and provide their feedback. I just want to provide some information here about the steps in the development of the ethics application. And one of the reasons for doing this is so you can have some sort of picture of when we anticipate launching the ethics application. And when I say launching, I will point out that it's actually available now. As soon as we have it on our production version, you can actually take the application and use it as you or your institution sees fit. It's just that, as I pointed out previously, we wish to have some time just to refine it to make sure it works for everyone. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that in section 1, this was a concept development which started in 2013 and finished roughly in May 2015 when we began our pilots. In section 2, we've continued to build our functionality here over the last year, testing it through small pilot testing within the Australian Capital Territory to get information about its usability there, both for researchers, for ethics officers, and for Human Research Ethics Committee. We intend during this period, between now and August, September this year, to test the beta version. As we said, the version now is almost ready to go. We do have to get it on our production server, but for the most part, we feel we have incorporated the changes that have been required at this time. I have there an asterisk under incorporate changes because obviously it depends on what changes are required by users. As I pointed out earlier, this is primarily an ethics form and we're more than happy to look at the possibility of inserting information or fields in there which will clarify that it's an ethics form and clarify its purpose for an ethics committee. We have to be judicious in the way in which we add fields such that we don't really wish to make it more than it is at the moment. Part of the functionality of this form anticipates that you will be able to attach other information to the form such that in the event of having a protocol or in the case of clinical trials a site-specific authorization form or a patient information and consent form or a project description, then you will be able to attach these to the form. This is within the IT functionality of the form. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the diagram there, the launch will occur as soon as we are able around about August, September 2016, and we'll continue to support the NIEF during this time. However, it's important for everyone to understand that at some point we cannot continue to support the NIEF. But what's important for us is ensuring that there is an appropriate transition period during which time we are able to provide training and education around the use of the Human Research Ethics application, and I suppose providing assurance to organisations that we will continue to help them out where required. So at this time then, just to reiterate, the key dates are once we have done our beta testing, which we anticipate will be completed around August, September 2016, as soon as we have been able to incorporate those changes which are required, we would propose to launch the form. I say launch, this would be a soft launch, noting that it will be available before this time anyway. We will continue to transition to the HREA during that next period. At this point, we anticipate 6 months, and we hope to stick to that, but it really depends on the needs of the research community. So it's easy for us to say that we think the HREA will benefit users, but I just wanted to give you some concrete examples of how that might be the case. Firstly, we anticipate it will reduce the duplication between the project description and the application. What this means is that the form itself will only collect the information required for the ethics committee, so narrative about the ethics of the research that's taking place. By attachment of the protocol itself and by cross-referencing those respective sections of the protocol, it means that you won't have to cut and paste from your protocol into a form, and that will undoubtedly benefit many of those that either have to complete the form or assess it. Secondly, as I've already pointed out, it will enable attachment of any relevant documents to the form. I've listed a few, but there may be more, and this then provides that institutional flexibility to be able to seek information from researchers that may be required either under legislation or as part of the research enterprise. I've talked about the fact it will collect only relevant information. It's important probably to point out that the NIEF itself had 620 odd data fields. The HREA will only have, I think, approximately 280 data fields. So that will be a huge burden reduced to those that actually have to complete the form. Also, because of the way it's laid out, it will be very obvious where the information will occur. Secondly, because it will be a bespoke form and it will only generate questions which are relevant to the research which is taking place, there won't be that possibility of providing information which isn't required. One next aspect which I think will be of great benefit to those assessing the application is the ability to provide a comparison document which will show the track changes between an initial application and that which is assessed by an ethics committee. By this I mean when you submit the application to the ethics office and then to the ethics committee, and the ethics committee asks for changes, you will be able to provide a second version which will have track changes on it. This will immediately enable the ethics committee to know where those changes have been made. I think this is a great step forward in the functionality of the form. The final point on the slide there is supporting collaboration between researchers. So any researchers who wish to use the HREA and do so through the website hrea.gov.au, which is where the form will be held, will be able to allow their research colleagues in the research teams be able to share the application with them, and for those colleagues to be able to advise that they agree with the information that's provided. This is a great step forward and can be done via electronically, which will save a significant amount of time. So some other features of the HREA, without reading them all out, we've talked about the top one. It does encourage narrative responses. It's not a tick box. It's not closed questions. This asks about the ethical implications of the research. In that sense, and because a national statement provides guidance, and also because there is guidance text to encourage these responses, we feel this will lead to a better outcome for ethics committees. The majority of questions will have help, contextual help and guidance there, and will also reference some external material. I've mentioned the fact that the project description, etc., will be included as attachments, and the fact that there's a significant reduction in the number of questions that will be asked. The last dot point there is important. This IT solution is it's remarkably easy to update the form. As one who's not overly conversant with this technology, I can advise that it's possible for me to update the form, albeit slightly slower than my colleague Joel, who is somewhat more proficient at it. The point being, though, if there's a need, as there may be on an annual basis, to update a field or questions, this can be done immediately. I will talk about the ability to license the content from the form, but any license will be predicated on the ability of those licensees to update the form in a timely manner. In that way, we manage version control and we ensure that there's a consistency between all applications used in Australia. So what does the application look like? And we're getting close to Joel doing a bit of a demonstration here. But largely there are 4 sections of the form. As you can see there, section 1 is general information. Section 2 is questions based on the methodology and participant group. And it's answers to these questions that will generate the bespoke form. So for example, if you are conducting research in, say, epidemiology and you're using a certain participant group, the only questions that will be asked will be those that have generated specific ethical concerns related to those methodologies and participant groups. In that sense, you will only have to answer those questions. Section 3, data and privacy, and of course we've kept it separate from Section 2. And Section 4, attachments, you can of course attach anything here. You will have to declare that it is a true record of the research, and then there will be the ability to submit it. Of course, for low-risk research and for negligible risk research, there will not necessarily be the need, or at least for low risk, not necessarily be the need to answer all of these sections. Similarly, for negligible risk research, where we anticipate that you would have to agree with your ethics office that your research was negligible risk, will of course not lead to you having to fill in all the form. So instead of it being a significantly long document as a national ethics application form was, it is possible that you will have a very short form. When I talk about the methodology and participant groups, we have developed these methods for which there are discrete additional ethical considerations that can't be addressed with guidance to a more general question. So with the input of our advisory committee and with the feedback obtained through the consultation, we believe that these methodologies listed there, action research, etc., are those that generate specific ethical questions. Similarly, with the participant groups, these are groups that have come directly from the national statement. It is the combination of the methodology and the participant group that will give rise to the bespoke form. And as you'll see here, in terms of the IT features of the HREA, this form possesses skip logic. That is to say, you will only have to answer questions if the answer to the previous question lends itself to answering the following question. A contemporary form in the UK called the IRAS, the Integrated Research Application System, uses similar logic to this. But in order to move away from answering every question related to the paragraphs in a national statement, this skip logic will prove, we believe, to be a great step forward. The form itself is easy to use and navigate, and of course it's easy for us to say that, and Joel will demonstrate this, but ultimately the proof of the pudding will come in your testing. So we anticipate that during this beta testing period, this claim will be able to be justified. We believe it supports integration with existing workflows and information management systems. So existing workflows means that you will be able to submit it from the hrea.gov.au into your own system, and from there into your own workflow. In order to make changes and to incorporate the track change version, of course, there will be a need to come back into our system, but this can be done, of course, sitting in one place and does not require any physical movement. We have been working with those vendors of information management systems and are currently establishing a linkage to make sure that we can transfer the information in an XML format between the HREA and one of the information management systems. This work is going very well as a proof of concept, and we believe that if we can demonstrate it once, then any system should be able to achieve that. The last two dot points on that page, the rich text entry and the e-signatures, are something that Joel will demonstrate, but the rich text entry enables the, emphasizing of aspects of the application that weren't previously able to be done so in the National Ethics Application Form. This itself will allow those people completing the form to emphasize those bits they think important, but it will also provide an indication to an ethics committee of the importance of that information, and as such make it easier for them. The e-signatures again facilitates collaboration between researchers and is a step up from a paper version. So just a quick word about the workflow and interoperability features. As you can see there, we believe that it supports existing workflows. This form will be able to be provided in hard copy, in email, or by seamless digital submission through a web service and by upload of an XML format output document. We've talked about the track changes functionality and the version comparison, and the ability to attach documents depending on jurisdictional requirements. We are not going to mandate what documents require to be attached. This can be done at an institutional or indeed jurisdictional level. We've talked about its integration with existing information management systems, but note then that it uses industry standard file outputs such as those described there. With respect to the data schema, there have been some questions about whether or not we can provide a data schema, and of course we're more than happy to do that. It's just that during the beta testing, it's possible that there may be some other questions posed or suggestions for fields to be changed. In that sense, as soon as we're comfortable that we don't need to change the form anymore, we will be more than happy to provide that data schema to whomever requires it. This is important because although we would of course like everyone to be entering the form through our website, hrea.gov.au, in actual fact we're somewhat agnostic to the fact that the actual content can be built in an institutional system. In that sense then, it would be necessary to provide a data schema to institutions that wish to go down that road. That said, the advantage of utilizing the form within our system is that it has that functionality built in, that skip logic. If the skip logic is not able to be built in a destination IT system, then it will lose significant functionality. So just to give you a bit of a diagram of how it may integrate with other systems, as you can see there, if a researcher enters the HREA through hrea.gov.au, they can submit it directly into an institutional IT system or to the research office, or if in the case of central coordination systems, if applicable, it would go into the central coordination system and then into an institutional IT system and into a jurisdictional system. So there are a number of options for how this can be transmitted. What I want to point out at the bottom there is, and this is specifically applicable to those that wish to develop applications for clinical trials is that we've tried to build in the possibility of utilising some of the information within the form to be directly able to be entered into the Australia-New Zealand's clinical trial register. Secondly, although we haven't developed this to any certain extent, we see the possibility of using some information and working with the TGA to try and insert information into their electronic CTN form. I must stress that these are future functionalities and haven't reached any particular stage of discussion, but there is this opportunity, and if there is any way we can to minimize the duplication of data entry, then I think we should try to take that. One other point I'd just like to make, and that's on the box on the bottom of the left-hand side, is there is a possibility through the use of a dashboard to collect some information from the HREA, and that really is about the analytics of the people that use the form. So we would, if everyone were to enter through our website, we would then be able to provide accurate details of how many had used that form. But similarly, I think we want to look at the possibility of utilising the form for the collection of information which is normally provided to the NHMRC as part of an annual report. Again, this isn't fully formed yet, but again, I think any way we are able to minimise effort by institutions is something we should look at. Okay, so I'm about to hand over to my colleague Joel Ceramidas here, and Joel is going to just demonstrate some of the aspects of the form. These are the top 6, we believe, functions that is important to show you, and I'm fairly certain, because I can see my colleague Rob Rigby writing down questions, that people are asking questions as we speak. So Joel, over to you.
Thank you, Gordon. So this is the HREA landing page. Once you log into the HREA, this is the page that you'll see. As you can see, it's nice and open, it's nice and simple. There's not a lot going on here. With a single click, I can start a new application by just clicking here where my mouse is, or I can open an existing application by clicking on any one of these applications I recently worked on. If you notice here at the top of the page, there's these tabs, and I'm able to click on, for example, the Information tab and review some guidance and some information that will help me complete my application. This provides information such as about recruitment and targeted recruitment or coincidental recruitment and other useful information. It also provides useful links such as to the national statement, the code, and other resources that are useful for completing your application. The Applications tab allows you to manage your applications that you create. So for example, if you had 2 or 3 applications going at once, this is where you would manage them. There's a simple profile that you'll have in the HREA. We've intentionally made sure that that's very thin. We didn't want to ask many questions or much information about you more than what we needed to create a profile. You'll also notice that this help button is here. And at any point in time you can click this and you'll see that a window will pop up and show you some information that will help you. What I'm going to do now is open an application that I've started earlier. So I'll scroll down and click on one. So here is the actual application form itself. As we said, it's very simple to navigate. On the left-hand menu here, I can immediately jump to any of the pages. So for example, say I wanted to add my research team to this application, I could simply click ahead, and once the form loads, I can see Gordon's already on here and I'll start adding some information. Likewise, I could jump ahead and just talk about maybe the restrictions on this project, whether or not there is some issues about the release of the data once it's completed. And by simply clicking on a button, a field is now available or removed based on its relevance. I'll show you quickly this one page here, which is the overview page, the first real page with questions on it that you'll need to answer. As you can see, there's a little orange alert here that's telling me I've forgotten to do something. So what it's saying is that the question which is asking for a project title hasn't been answered. So I should probably answer that. Now that I've answered this question and moved on, you'll see that the alert has now gone. In this way, the HREA itself helps you to complete it. And as you'll notice on the left-hand side here, these pages are green because they're completed. Had I forgotten a question or missed something, they'd be orange. So I'd easily be able to jump through the application and complete those questions that I've forgotten. The great thing about this application system is that there are lots of useful ways to complete the information. So the question I was asked here was about where will the research be conducted? As you note, I'm using bold, italics, I'm going to underline something. All of this is very easy. I can insert Greek characters if I need to. Here I'll chuck in a few more. I can subtext, supertext, I can add a list, and this is all very easy to do within the system. The benefit of this means that you, the researcher, are asked to complete the information and provide it to your ethics committee in a way that makes sense. It allows you to use the HREA as though it was a Word document and complete it easily. You can easily add the information in here and change it as you need to. You're not restricted by the system itself. Gordon spoke a fair bit about the bespokeness of this application and how the application system can change based on the information you provide. So I'll now demonstrate that. The first few tabs you'll see across here are all very generic. Every piece of research will have a research team, and every project needs to declare whether or not there's conflicts of interest. About the middle of the application here, you'll see methods and participants, and these are what Gordon discussed earlier. So on this page, you'll see that I'm asked about what research methods I'll be using in this research project. So for example, I've ticked here biospecimens. The consequence of this is that the biospecimen related questions will now be applicable to me. Had I not ticked this, I wouldn't see them. So in this research project, for example, I'm not getting asked about action research method, data linkage, ethnographic, or any of the other groups because those methodologies are not related to my research project. By the same way, when I go to the participants page, I explain what kind of human participants are being involved. So human beings, for instance, where there are actual people I'm working with or I'm doing research with. That's an important step to distinguish whether or not it's data about them or some biospecimens from them or them personally. And then we're asked down here, does my research involve any of the following groups? And these are from the National Statement, Chapter 4. So for instance, say I ticked children and young people, a subsequent question of the HREA will then ask me questions about it. So now we should demonstrate this. On the method-specific page you'll see here, because I ticked biospecimens, I'm now getting asked a question about the type of biospecimens I'm using. This is a consequence of ticking that earlier option. I wouldn't have seen this question had I not ticked that biospecimen section. Likewise, in the participant section, I explained that I'm using children and young people, so therefore this tab is now available and it's prompting me for questions to answer about children and young people and how they're involved in this research. This wouldn't have happened, of course, had I not selected that methodology. The great function about this is that the form is condensing and expanding simply based on what you've told the research that's involving. So if I had used multiple different methodology groups there, the form would have got a little bit bigger, or it would have shrunk if I was using less. The other advantage is that as I go through the form, now that the HREA knows I'm using these participants or these methodologies, additional guidance can be popped up for some questions which are specific just to that methodology or participant group. So for example, if I'm asked about the risks of my project, because I'm using children and young people, I'm going to get some additional guidance that suggests how I address the risks related to involving children and young people. Of course, I wouldn't get that same guidance if I wasn't ticking that methodology or participant group. As you go through the form, you might get to a point where you want to have a look at it and preview how the form looks as a completed document. The great thing is, with a simple click of one button, you're able to do so. Now, I've done this earlier and be able to produce a PDF output document that shows my application. As you can see, the project title I've put in here, and there's a summary of research, and all those rich text entry that I put in there, so the bolding, the underlining, the characters, the Greek letters, they've all been transferred across. This means that I can print out this form and take it and talk to my colleagues, go work on it offline, or do many different functions with it. The HREA also allows you to manage for amendments to this application. So say, for example, you completed your application and you submitted it, and then you were told by the ethics committee that they want a little bit more information, possibly about one aspect of your research, or you decided to add some more investigators. It's very simple to change that in the HREA, but the benefit of the system, like Gordon discussed, is that those amendments are also captured in this application and in this PDF output. So now let me show you another PDF here where I've made some changes. I changed the summary of the research project. I mentioned that some other things are going on. I changed the funding, and because of that, track changes are now captured in this document. This means that at a glance, you, your collaborators, and your ethics committee are all very easy and very able to see what information has changed between versions. So I'll jump back into the HREA again for a second. Now, as you see here, there's a number of different sections, and we've intentionally broken them down so there's lots of different tabs on the left so you can move through easily. Towards the end of the application, you'll be asked to upload a document, a project description. So with a simple click, you're able to find a file that is your project description and upload it into the system. I won't do so now, but that's all it takes. As you can see, this question here also asks if there are any other relevant documents to attach to the project. And with a simple answer of yes, you're now provided an opportunity to try and complete them. So for example, I'm going to add a letter of support. That's all it takes. Clicking one button here, and I pick the file from my desktop, and I can add it to the HREA. So I need another one. I just click the little plus button. My second letter of support, or a department head sign-off. All of this can work to your system. If, for instance, your institution asks you to add a specific document if you're submitting an application, this can be added here. The HREA will take all those application documents together and collect them, add the application title, and give you a zip file that has all that information in one place. That means you don't have to run around trying to find the different application documents, find the letter of support, find your HREA, find your PICF. It's all composed in one place, all with the same application ID, so you can find it easy. It also means that you can send it to your ethics committee nice and easy. So Gordon talked about signatures, and I'll just demonstrate that now. So for example, Gordon is the investigator on this project, and he's read through and certified that the application is correct, that he's read the national statement, and he's familiar with it. And Gordon will now sign it. This isn't his actual signature, of course. There you go. It was simple as that. And for each investigator on the project, they will all get a little page like this where they can sign on screen. We also provide the function that if you prefer to sign in wet ink on a document, then you can just change your selection here, click upload signature, and by a simple click you can attach that document that has your signature in it. It's all very easy. As for where to submit the application, well, you just go to the HREC page. On this page, you select the organisation you want to apply to. So for instance, in this instance, it's organisation number 2. You pick from the list which ethics committee you're going to, and it will tell you their contact information right in front of you. So in case you want to ask them a question before you submit, want to make sure everything's right, you can call them up or give them an email and find out before you hit go. Once you're done, and once all the green line up here on the left and you haven't forgotten anything, you can move on to the download and submit function. And this button here is all it takes. With a click of a button, your application is packaged, prepared, and if the institution has set up their web service with us, they'll receive the application online straight away. We know that this might not be the case for everyone straight away, so we've provided features in this that support other processes. So for example, if I click this button now, which I won't do because I can't, because I haven't finished all the fields, let's say I did, it would tell me the application is ready to be submitted and tell me how that institution likes to receive applications. So for example, if they prefer email submission, then it'll tell me on the screen that that's how they like to receive their applications, and it'll give me their email address to send it to, which means in a click of a button, I'm able to send an email to the ethics committee and submit my application, which is much more straightforward. The advantage of this system, which I won't demonstrate now though, is that you are able to collaborate with your researchers. So I could share this application with Gordon and allow him to jump in and have a look, make sure that I've got everything right and check that it's okay before I hit submit. The system supports all those functions.
Well, thanks a lot, Joel. That is a bit of a whirlwind tour through the HREA. But I hope everyone will understand that the form has a significant amount of, how can I say, it's very dynamic and has a significant amount of functionality. From our perspective, again, because we've developed it in conjunction with our advisory group, we believe it is pretty much ready to go. Now, one thing I will point out is that even though that actually seemed fast, and well done, Joel, because it's actually worked very nicely this time, when it goes to the production version, that is to say, when we do our beta testing, it will be a lot faster than this. So there won't be any lag time. Even though you may not have seen any lag time there, it will be a lot more efficient. So that being the case, it should be very easy to use. Okay, so moving on, we've only got a couple of slides left. Excellent, thanks Joel. What I just wanted to do then is provide a bit of certainty around timelines for you. And this is because it's important, I think, especially in this format or this forum, for you all to understand where we are thinking about this. We also understand that there are institutions and some jurisdictions that need some certainty around their planning as well. So as you can see there, the form completion and the phase 1 beta testing has taken place. That took place in the ACT around and finished this month. We are now planning within the next week or two, but largely dependent upon when we get our production version finalized, to get the beta testing started. We anticipate that this will take until August this year. And the reason for that is that if we are to look at really the timing around application preparation and submission, that currently is, at least for some applications of clinical trials, can take a bit longer than others. So if we said 60 days for that, that would be roughly appropriate. But it's important that we are able to say with confidence by the time that we come to make it freely available that we believe we're in a position where all the questions reflect those required by ethics committees. At this time, and just to reiterate, it is possible for us to give you what we've got right now, but that's not to say that that wouldn't change following this beta testing. I would also want to say that even though the large number of questions, as we said, are finalized, the rolling review of the national statement will lead to questions being changed probably on an annual basis or when that rolling review occurs. So while for the most part the form is in a very good shape, it has to be dynamic. When will we close the content before launching? Ideally, we would like to do that at the end of the beta testing. We would anticipate then that the beta testing will be completed in August 2016 with a launch, and when we say launch, we mean a soft launch around about September. After that time, we would of course want to transition to the HREA, make it available, and eventually, I guess, cease support for the NIEF. Although we have their suggested timelines of March or April 2017, that's not definite. That's just to give you an idea of where we're working towards. It does depend on the needs of the institutions that continue to use NIEF. But please note that the resources required to support NIEF are significant, and as such, we obviously have to look to see how we can be more efficient. Now, I did want to talk about access to content because that was mentioned on the slide at the beginning. There are a number of options here, and what we have tried to do throughout this process is provide options to stakeholders. The options for how they can actually access the content, the options for the ways in which the information is provided to them, the options for integrating with their existing workflows. The form will be available on that website, www.hrea.gov.au. What Joel has shown you right now is the test version whereby you couldn't log in as a user. When it comes to the production version, you will be able to log in to the site and applications will be saved there until such times as they're submitted. And after that time, they'll be saved for a defined period of time. Now, there is also the possibility for organizations to take the content which we would license and build it into their own information technology system. As I suggested earlier, that's of course one way to go, but what it will do, unless the system is as dynamic, is probably remove the functionality that we've built into it. So what could happen then is where you might have ended up with a short form by going through the hrea.gov.au site, it may not be as brief were you to not build in that functionality into your IT system. So that, of course, is a trade-off and one which organizations will have to consider themselves. Will the data schema be available? Of course, as suggested, it will be available, and while we could provide it now, there is a possibility that some of those questions or fields may change during the beta testing. How will we make this data schema available? We intend to license it as has previously been done with the National Ethics Application Form. So there is absolutely no change from the current situation. In this sense, the license will be provided to those that asked and those that were able to demonstrate their ability to make the changes required in a timely fashion. This is to ensure that there is version control within the form and we don't end up with various versions of the HREA around Australia. If we are to try and achieve consistency, unity and a national focus, I think it's important that we all try and use, where possible, the same form. So pretty much this will be almost the last slide. These are some questions I thought was worth thinking about. Adding more fields to the application. Well, Joel is very efficient at this, and of course we can add more fields, and this will occur, may occur during or after the beta test, though not definitely. Will the application collect data? Well, of course, we want to integrate this form with the annual report form as far as possible. That's not to say that at this time organizations will not have to generate an annual report form. We just have to look more closely at the data that can be collected and how it can be collected using the IT system available. Will it be used as a governance form? At this stage, the form itself is an ethics form. That is important for us to stress. However, if you wish to attach governance information into the form, then that is a different matter, of course, because of the possibility of attaching information. And just to point out, we have already incorporated some information from the Victorian specific module for clinical trials in the clinical trials section of the form, because we believe that this information is required for the ethics committee to make a decision about ethical acceptability, and for the office, the ethics office, to make a decision as to whether or not the clinical trial application should go through a certain regulatory process. Will the website hold records about my research? Well, as I pointed out, if you're a registered user, your form will exist until such times as you submit it. Once submitted, and bearing in mind that at this time you will download a local copy of this form, the form will be held on hrea.gov.au for, at this time, a minimum period of 30 days. This default period can be modified, but at this time we don't wish to hold applications there for any longer than we have to. And this functionality has been built in as a result of the consultation, so NHMRC hasn't made this decision unilaterally. Will I be able to decide about the level of risk of my research? Answer: no. This is not a decision that is to be made by researchers. Our advisory group was clear and unequivocal in their advice to us that this is a decision that should be made by the executive officer or the research office. That said, and as I pointed out, the questions that will have to be answered on the application will occur as a result of the combination of the methodology and the participant groups listed on the application. Can I make changes to my application? Well, I think Joel has demonstrated the ability to make changes and the ability to use rich text and the ability to provide a comparison document. So a real great step forward. What about existing NIF applications? Well, there I'm afraid we're unable to help you too much insofar as the system itself won't really utilize NIF applications. That said, you will always be able to cut and paste from a NIF application should you have to. Now, I know that probably doesn't deal with all your questions, and I'm fairly certain that Rob has some questions for us to answer. But let me just finish by saying that in terms of key messages, we believe the HREA is a contemporary and user-friendly application. It has been developed on the basis of, and we believe provides options for users in many ways. This is a great step forward, and what we hope that it's taken up. We believe it will facilitate more efficient completion and assessment. Once again, it's important that the testing provides us with this information. And of course, we don't intend to withdraw our support for NIF immediately, but in fact, this will occur following a defined transition period. So we are going to stop at this time and I guess enable questions to be answered. Rob has some questions for us. But for those who wish to go, thank you for your attention, and please don't forget to complete the survey on your way out. So Rob, what burning questions do we have to be answered?
Thank you, Gordon. Your answers before did cover a lot of questions. I'd also like to thank everyone for sending in the questions. I think I've got about 7 or 8 pages of hastily scribbled notes. We won't have time to get to them all in this session, but what we will do is take this list of questions back to the office and use this to generate a sort of a community-driven frequently asked questions document. Once we get that together, we'll be publishing that on the NHMRC website along with a link to the presentation. So if we don't get to your question now, be sure that we'll address all the questions that have been sent through in due course. So Gordon, I'd just like to start with one of the questions which I'm sure many people have, and that is, you mentioned how the HRA may be able to use gather data for the annual report. Does this mean that HREX no longer need to submit the annual report if they use the HREA?
And Rob, I think I may have dealt with that one already, but at this time, ethics committees will still have to complete the annual report. I think this is something we want to look at in the future as ways to minimise the amount of effort on ethics committees and particularly on ethics officers. I think it is important that the form is compatible with the systems used by institutions, and only then will we be able to say that unequivocally. I don't think we can say that at this time. As I said, we want to try and collect information for the ANZ Clinical Trials Registry and for the TGA's eCTN form. But again, I think these are discussions we have to have down the track. First and foremost, we have to get this out as the ethics form to replace the NIF.
Thanks, Gordon. Another question, what guidance and training will NHMRC be providing for users of the HREA?
So we're preparing both written instructions which will explain step by step how to do every step, how to log on, how to create an application, how to submit an application, how to use every feature within the system. So there'll be written instructions. We're also generating how-to videos that explain step by step how to do the steps. So they'll show you where to click, what information you might need to do, and how to use the system to its full potential. Because there's a lot of functions in the HREA that will make completing an application much easier. So we want to empower you to be able to do those easily.
Thanks, Joel. Another question maybe for you, Joel, is around the track changes functionality. People seem very interested in this and are wondering, can they turn track changes on or off? Can they submit a clean version to the HREC rather than a track change version? Maybe you can explain a little more about that functionality.
Sure. The track changes feature is one of the best features of the HREA to allow you to show differences between your first application and an amendment. So that application document, that track change document, is generated if you create a new version of your application. So on the first time you complete an application, you submit it, there's of course nothing to compare to. But once you've completed and submitted an application, it's then that you're allowed the opportunity to produce an amended document. So for example, say I submit my application and I've made a few mistakes and I want to add a few investigators, then I open up the HREA, click one button that says new version, and the system automatically prepares me a new application that allows me to make that track change document. When I hit preview or when I hit submit, I'll get both a clean version and a track change version. So I can submit either one or both, depending on what the HREC that you're submitting to prefers to have.
Thanks, Joel. Another question for you while we're going.
Sure.
People are interested in where you indicate the methods and the participant groups you're using. And someone's asked, what happens if you're using more than one method or more than one participant group?
Thanks, Rob. Look, it's very simple. You tick more options. The form will expand and contract based on what you answer. So if you have multiple methods going at once, you tick those options and more questions will appear later on. If you use less, you tick less. It's all dynamic and all based on what application, what research you're conducting. There's no limit to the number you can pick, or there's no restriction on how many you need.
Thanks, Joel. And finally, I think we have time for one more question, and this one's for Gordon. A number of people have asked, how can they get involved in the beta testing?
Good question, and thank you for your interest. So far we do have a number of institutions who have indicated their agreement to participate. I think the answer is send us an email, because what is most important is that we're able to say with confidence that this form works across all fields of research. I read a PowerPoint presentation recently about health services research, for example, which suggested that it was very difficult for them to get approval across a large number of sites. And so it made me realize that this is an area we have to deal with as well. So please contact us on clinicaltrials@nhmrc.gov.au or any of us personally, actually, and we will be more than happy to consider participation of your organization in this beta testing. So look, I think that's probably all we have time for, noting that it's 1:30, at least in Eastern Australia. I hope this has been very useful for you. It's an educational experience for us, certainly. Please don't forget to complete your survey on your way out, and I think that all remains for me to do is to thank ANDS for their participation and to thank Joel and Rob for their assistance in this presentation. And with that, good afternoon to you all.
See you later.
See ya.